Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Worth Jr. and I wanted to talk about the importance of education and contrast that with the efforts of Donald Trump's GOP to vilify education. He's been attacking relentlessly higher education institutions the whole time. He himself thought it was important enough to go to college, even if his dad had to buy his way in to the Wharton Business School at Penn, which is an Ivy League school. That's the enemy, right? That's the enemy of Trump, the great enemy. He does have some people in his administration that are educated in Ivy League institutions. That's where the influence is. Certainly, that's also where great education can happen. It's just so important. Whether I'm wearing a Stanford shirt on purpose today. That's where my son went. Got my SMU coffee mug sitting right there. That's what I drank out of this morning, and my kids are on my mind. My daughter's here in Dallas, but she's working from here this week. Thanksgiving week, so she can work remotely, and my son's coming in from LA with his girlfriend. The reason he's in LA is because he went to school in California and met a girl. There's just it just permeates everything you do, and I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of my own school, Texas. I just look at I got my wife's Texas Tech seal right over there on the wall. It's just cool. It means you went someplace to try to, whether you knew exactly what you wanted to do, or maybe you wanted some time to figure it out. You wanted to go explore some things. I'm going to pull up my phone over here because that reminds me of something else with my daughter. But it is pursuing knowledge, and it's pursuing relationships. It is pursuing relationships with people who have knowledge, whether that's professors or friends or whatever. And authoritarians, whether it's someone like Adolf Hitler, or someone like Donald Trump, or someone like Lenin in the Soviet Union, they're trying to block. You have over in China a lot of censorship too. They're trying to block information from reaching people because knowledge is power. And they try to suppress this. And I was listening to Fareed Zakaria talking, or actually I had it playing on YouTube, talking to Ezra Klein. And it was over an hour-long conversation on YouTube, and I'm about 50 minutes of the way through it. And Fareed Zakaria is talking about the flip with the educated class. The Republicans used to have it locked up. The college educated, the white collar jobs, those careers, the higher incomes, that was Republican territory. And something changed, and now that is the Democrats. And then the Democrats used to have the blue collar, not the college educated type. And the Republicans now have the blue collar, not college educated types. And that is a big part of it. That can be populism, of course, but that's a big part of the swing to Trump. What did he do to appeal to these former Democrat stronghold voters? The Democrats have always been more influential in higher education in the institutions themselves, and they still are. So that's why Trump's going after them. That's why he's extorting them for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Those that don't agree with him. Those that do agree with him, like, for instance, SMU is a very conservative college. My daughter is a political science major, and I was reading, I'm not going to look it up, just today on NBCnews.com, I was reading an article about things going on right now, and in it cited a Newsweek interview with an SMU professor, and my daughter had him for Texas constitutional law, and I'm reading a quote about this guy and about where Trump's losing and why he's losing, and it's just pretty cool because I ask her about this, and she vividly remembers classes with this guy, the whole class, but specifically classes who the guy reminded her of. He reminded her of my wife's dad, who was a longtime Texas politician. He went to SMU himself for law school. And with that came great respect. That's part of the reason she went to SMU. She just wanted to, honor her grandfather's memory, and it's part of the reason she studied politics. This stuff carries on from generation to generation, and this is what Trump's trying to erase. And he's trying to, I guess, maybe deprogram people who are going to college. But the thing is, you can go to college and you can study whatever you want. You could take whatever classes from whatever you want. And a professor or a lecturer or whoever can have whatever perspective they want. You just need to learn the material. And I've talked about this, if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, how I went to the University of Texas myself from 88 to 92. And I loved history and I loved government. And I was very conservative then, very into the Cold War. We had a history professor on loan from Berkeley one semester, and that was my American history class. And it was kind of more modern American history, the second half of American history. And he did not agree with the papers I wrote. He was just very liberal, and I was very conservative. And it was hard for me to see the 60s that he went through, and he protested when he was a student out there. It was hard for me to see that perspective, and I didn't get a lot of it, and I didn't agree with a lot of it. And my papers, such as they were by a 19-year-old, reflected that lack of understanding. And I got a C in the class, which is pretty shocking to me. Whereas a government guy that I took a class with, he was part of Zbigniew Brzezinski's staff in the 70s, just as conservative as they come. It was American foreign policy. That's why I am so hawkish when it comes to Ukraine and Europe and halting the advance of Putin's Russia. I studied what happens when you don't halt people's advances. And this guy and I were just completely on the same wavelength. I get an A in that class. Now, you may think, okay, that's what Trump's talking about. You shouldn't have to agree with the people in order to get a good grade, right? But that's not the case, because I knew people in that class they were at UT, they're very liberal, and they also got A's. Now, I didn't know any conservatives in that Berkeley professor's history class. I just wasn't, I wasn't that social. But if you know the material and you demonstrate an understanding of the material, you still get a good grade, regardless of a conflicting viewpoint. At least that's the way it was in my experience, and I bet it's the same now. I don't think these institutions have gotten more liberal. They were always liberal. Even in Texas, even in a conservative state like Texas, that UT is quite a liberal institution. So that's just the nature of higher education itself, I guess. Those are the people that go for the PhDs. Those are the people that end up teaching at universities. But they can teach any subject, and as long as you're doing the work and learning about it, knowledge is still power. I retain my liberal learnings and my conservative learnings. So when you have someone like Trump, who's just completely vilifying these, say Ivy League schools mostly, but not only, he's not doing that because he thinks education is worthless. He's doing that because he knows that the more people learn, the more of a threat to him and his movement it is. He tries to outlaw certain teachings and certain institutions. And that's just something that comes right out of every authoritarian's playbook. You can't have the people knowing things, because if they do, well, then you're not going to be in power for very long. We see that all over Europe. We have educated people all over Europe in the political leaders over there. Zelensky himself, I'm not sure how educated he is, but he's smart because he might be highly educated. I don't know. But he trusts people who are educated. He trusts people who know things. Whereas Trump puts his trust in just common criminals and corruption. That's all he cares about. He cares about power and corruption, and it has nothing to do with education. And in fact, it's often diametrically opposed to educated people. Not to say you can't be corrupt if you have an education, not at all. But the type of people that Trump is getting to do his dirty work are not the best and the brightest. That they're pretty dim and they're pretty terrible. And if you look at what Trump is trying to hide, he's trying to hide information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He fired the head of it months ago. He didn't like the numbers coming out. Like I had a job once where I was sending in information from our business to the U.S. to the government because they needed it for these monthly and quarterly statistics, how our business was doing, or what types of products we were selling, how many employees we had, just basic statistical information. And then I would talk to people working for the United States government if I needed to get a little extra time on my submission, or I needed a clarification on what they were looking for. These people were super helpful, super accommodating, and I'd send the information onto them, and then they would put all the information together and they would issue reports. That's how we get these economic indicators like inflation and unemployment and GDP. And these are numbers that the Fed uses to set economic policy, including the interest rates. And the numbers are embarrassing for Trump. The inflation's just going through the roof again right now. And unemployment is going sky high as well. And he used the government shutdown as an excuse to, well, we can't compile these numbers. We don't have the people. They were non-essential people, so they couldn't compile the numbers. We couldn't issue the numbers. And that was a fact. But now he's continuing to suppress these numbers. Well, now the people are doing their jobs again. Now it is simply because he doesn't want the numbers to be known, because they're terrible for him politically. That's why he has a disapproval rating on the economy right now of 76%. And for comparison, when Biden left office, which is the reason why Trump was mainly elected, right? The economy. Biden's disapproval rating on the economy was 70%. Right now, Trump's disapproval on the economy is 76%. And people don't even know how bad the actual numbers are. That's just living their lives. That's just going to stores and paying bills and buying things, or being out of jobs, or whatever it may be. So he's getting just destroyed on the economics front. So he's going to continue to suppress these numbers, continuing to suppress knowledge, information of all kind, continuing to suppress education itself. I think education should be celebrated. I think Zakaria had great things to say, not just about education, but great insights as to how Trumpism got to where it is, how it got so influential trend-wise. And I think it's a good watch if you look up Ezra Klein's interview with Fareed Zakaria. Just look it up on YouTube or look it up on Ezra's podcast. It's worth listening to. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. If you would give the video a like, I'd appreciate it. If you would comment on it, I'd appreciate it even more. And that's it for tonight. We'll talk later.